We are live on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. I am excited to give this this talk on leadership. We prefaced it a little bit last week when we talked about team building, right? So this is a good segue from team building into leadership because eventually you have to lead that team, right? It's not a one-time and done deal. You just build a team and then you're set and you're good to go. You need to continually lead that team so they achieve the goals and the results of the company. They accomplish the mission. So how do we lead a good team, right? So I call this the 8 characteristics of a great leader. And what I've learned from them, basically how it's impacted me. Now, I will start by saying that I am not self-proclaiming that I am an amazing leader. Okay, I do lead teams, and I think that I do a pretty good job doing it. But by no means am I a master leader like some of the leaders in the past. I have a lot to learn still, but I have learned some lessons from leading teams for the past decade, and I want to talk to you about those lessons. I will basically talk about a characteristic trait that I've noticed that's changed of mine over the past 10 years, and how I used to think to do things and how I do them now, right? And how it relates to that characteristic trait. And I'm going to talk about how it specifically relates to the gym and the fitness industry and how it's helped me accomplish my goals better at the gym. That way you guys can take some tactical advice from this and not just hear another motivational thing on leadership, but can actually apply it to your business, right? Through the mistakes that I've made. So with that being said, let me give a little background on how long I've been in a leadership position, okay? So it's been quite some time. I have been before the fitness industry, I was in the Army, okay? I was in the military. I deployed overseas, and that was sort of my first taste of real leadership, okay? I've led in other jobs before, like as a manager or things like that, but this is what I would consider my first real leadership, okay? So I deployed in 2010 to Baghdad, Iraq, and I was a leader of a small team. It's actually called a team, right? There's fire teams, and then there's squads, and then there's platoons, and then there's the company, right? I was only the leader of a team as a young sergeant. Okay, I was 22 at the time, 23, something like that. And I was leading a group of 5 people. But that was my first experience leading, right? And the reason I'm telling you this is because there are different leadership models that work different situations, right? The same leadership that I used back then would not be the exact same leadership style that would work at my gym right now. Okay, so I wanted to clear that up because some of the ways that I led then won't necessarily be how I would lead now. Not that they were bad, but they're just not as effective with the current team that I have. So back then, the leadership style was much more abrasive, right? It was much more direct. And if you're one of those leaders, that's the exact same leadership style. As an example, we would get orders, from higher ups, whether it's your captain or your first sergeant or whoever it would be. And you just simply have to give that information to the people below you and have them execute it. Period. Done. That's it. They said this, we do this. You follow orders, that's how it works. Okay? That leadership I took over to my business soon after I opened it, because that's what I knew. That's what I was good at doing. And that's what had gotten me results before, because there was no questioning orders, or there was no not doing it. There was no choice. It's what you did. But in the civilian world, that doesn't necessarily work as well, because people have a choice. People don't have to listen to you. Now, there's repercussions to that, but at the end of the day, would I be getting to my goal any quicker by leading like that, right? And it's not that I was intentionally being abrasive or leading with an iron fist, right? And saying, guys, this is what I need you to do, and you need to do it because you work for me, right? And I don't need to explain myself. Well, of course, I don't need to explain myself. I own the company. I pay them. But maybe explaining why would have gotten me to the result that I was looking for much easier. Okay, so that's one of the first lessons that I learned. Um, transitioning from an early leader to a leader now is ego. Okay. So having humility. And when I first started my company at the gym, I would, I'm going to say it. I had a big ego, right? I was a 23-year-old who owned his own business, right? It was a fitness business, a gym, right? Same gym I own now. And I had, 5 or 6 employees that worked for me. And I expected them to do exactly what I wanted them to do simply because I own the place, right? And simply because I said so. And it's I try not to be too harsh on myself for the way I led that team because that's all I knew, right? But when I realized that it wasn't as effective leader as it was in the military, that's when I decided to take action and learn more about leadership, which we'll get to. But I would do things like, and hopefully you guys learn from these mistakes, right? My coaches, they all wore uniforms, right? And so did I. But on the back of mine, it said owner, right? And there's all said coaches. That's one thing that I knew was ego driven, that wasn't necessary, right? They know I'm the owner. The members know that I'm the owner, and there was no strategic advantage of me showing everybody that I was the owner, right? It was something I did as a young kid, because I wanted to showcase my accomplishments, but it was not helping me accomplish my mission any better. In fact, it was probably creating more division between myself and my team, right? By putting myself on a pedestal. And for a small business with a team of only 5 or 6 people, there's no reason to do that. There's no reason to, we are not some massive company where I need to wear a nameplate to say what, who I am or who they're meeting with, or I have some kind of thing on my office, right? That says owner. So when people visit my gigantic building, they know that they're in the right office, right? It doesn't work like that, right? So there was no need for it. And I think I would have gotten much better results if I had just worn a coach shirt when I was coaching, right? And if I was doing something else like selling, maybe I put on a program designer shirt or whatever it may be, without having to display my title for clients and for my staff. But I learned that. And so if you could take a nugget from that, if you are, if you are walking around with an owner shirt on, or you're doing things like that, try to look introspectively and ask yourself why you're doing that. Is it just so you can assert your authority over everyone else, or is there a different reason, an actual reason for that? Okay. And it goes more so than just the ego, goes more so than just what shirt you wear, but like, take it one step farther. Are you parking in the closest parking space to the door, right? Why are you doing that? Because you can, right? Because the boss gets the best spot. Look, it's not an office building where it's all employees that park and you get this sign that says, boss's thing, and it's the closest one. Like, think about it. You should park farthest away because you should want to keep your closest spots for your customers. And you're an entrepreneur. You own the business. Nobody's going to tell you to do that, right? But you should want to do that. You should want to reserve your best spots for the members. And then even after that, you should want to reserve the next best spots for your staff, right? So you can over deliver and treat them good. And then after that, you should park far away and be grateful that you have a business that you can walk into that you own, and how amazing it is. So who cares if you have to park farthest away? You gave priority to everybody else that supports you, right? And you should feel that way. You should do that because that's how you truly feel. And once you can embrace a character trait like that, you become much more of an effective leader, okay? Much more of an effective leader you have to follow first. Okay, so that's ego, right? Take a look at all the things that you're doing on a daily basis, or how you present yourself, or decisions that you make, and ask, am I doing this because it is the best decision for everybody involved? Or am I doing this because it's going to make me feel better about myself, and validate my authority over everyone else and let them know who the boss is, right? Ego can be an absolute killer of a good team, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The next thing that the next character trait is ownership. So I've seen that great leaders have amazing ownership over everything in their world. Okay. So what do I mean by this? Well, essentially, when I first opened my company, right, I would put a lot of ownership on the people that I paid to do tasks. I would say, look, I hired you to be an admin, right? So if these payments don't go through, it's your fault, right? I hired you to be a trainer. So if you don't put on an amazing show or you don't show up on time or any of this stuff, it's your fault, right? And it's very easy as an owner, as an entrepreneur, to want to assign responsibility of your business to the staff that you've hired and paid to run it. Okay. It's very easy to want to do that. But I would argue that an effective leader, a great leader, shows ownership and takes ownership over everything in their world, right? So think about it in these terms. Okay. Well, your staff is underperforming, right? You're unhappy with your staff. Who hired them? Well, you did, right? Who trained them? You did. Who set the expectations for them and what you clearly want out of them? You did, right? All of these things you did as the owner of your business. And so if you need to make a change, I would take a look at changing yourself before you look at changing your team or what you expect of them. Is it possible that you hired the wrong person for that role? It's very possible you did, right? Is it possible that they don't share the same character traits that your business, the core tenets, like we talked about last week? It's very possible. Is it possible that you didn't clearly articulate what you need them to do and why you need them to do it so they can perform well? It's very possible you didn't, right? All of these things you should exhibit ownership of and not be a victim of your circumstances, right? And so I've learned a really tough lesson because I had a team back in 2014, 2015-ish, right? I had a team that I hired for the wrong reasons, right? I hired them because they knew a lot about fitness. They knew a lot about, they were successful, very successful with sales. I knew a lot of these guys from previous, jobs. But they were not a culture fit. And I ended up with an entire shitstorm on my hands of employees that I could not get to follow me because they did not possess the character traits that was required of a good team. They were almost all entrepreneurs in their own right. Imagine trying to get a bunch of people like yourself in a room together and work as a team. It's very difficult to do, right? Because everybody is an entrepreneur, right? And so I had to learn the hard way that I would never reach my goals with the decisions that I made of hiring that staff, right? Nobody forced me to bring on the wrong people. So it was a long road, but I have a completely different staff, 100% besides one person. Justin, shout out to you. You're awesome. A completely different staff of all new coaches and other, managers and things that I hired with that are core value fits, right? That do understand the mission, that I took my time to develop, that I took my time to train, that I took my time to articulate and communicate what I needed from them. I did it the right way, right? And so it was never my team's fault when they were underperforming, right? I set them up for failure in the first place. They were never going to accomplish the goals that I had set for them. They weren't going to because they were not the right people in the right roles with the right communication and information to do it. And that was my fault. And I could sit there and bitch about having a shitty team and say like, look, you know what? I just can't find anybody good, right? I don't know what to do. I'll probably just have to stay at this size because I just have to do everything myself, because there's no good workers out there. Imagine having that mindset and then not accomplishing your goals and blaming it on everybody else. That's not what a good leader does. A good leader looks at himself or herself first and then decides, is it something I could change? And I bet you 9 times out of 10, it is a change that you can make. So that's a little story that I learned with having ownership. And ownership goes beyond your staff, but it goes, a great leader will take responsibility over every single thing in their world. And I'm going to talk about pertaining that to business, but if you're not getting enough leads, if your sales guy is not closing enough, all of these things, you train the salesperson, you're in charge of the lead flow, right? If Facebook ads aren't working, guess what? It's your job to find another way, right? Your staff and your team and your members depend on you. It's not that the system is broken or people don't want to get in shape anymore. It's your job, right? And so if there's garbage on the floor when you're walking around, you own the building. It doesn't matter if you pay a cleaner. Are you going to pick it up or walk past it? You own everything in your world. That's the coolest thing about owning a business in general, is that it's almost like it's a country that you own, and you make all the rules and you make all the laws, right? And because within that building, everything is happening because of you, right? So don't take that from the standpoint of, well, everybody else has to do these certain things because I told them to, so I don't have to do any of it. You don't have to, right? But a good leader is going to be inspiring because they choose to own everything, right? They choose to take responsibility over everything. And I think that you'll have a much more motivated team and a much more relaxed mindset when you realize that you are the problem and the solution to everything in your business, because then you take control of it and you're not reactive, you're proactive. Things aren't happening to you, you are happening to them by having ownership over that business. Okay, so that's a second characteristic trait that I messed up at first by sort of assigning ownership to the people, but then taking it back made me a much better leader because I have control to change anything at any time over my business, right? Next, confidence and decisiveness, particularly when you're making decisions, okay? So this is a huge character trait that I learned the hard way. So let's talk about what I was doing wrong. And the whole point, the reason why I'm telling you what I was doing wrong and what change I made is because you might be doing one of these things wrong. And if you are, you can make the same change that I made. And now I'm in a really good spot because I made that change. And I'm hoping to help you with that as well. Use my failures to fast track you years and years, okay? Next, confidence and decisive. Okay, so when I first got together a good team, we used to do monthly meetings where I had rough ideas, but I would always ask everybody's opinion of what they thought of them, right? And one, because I wasn't as confident in myself, and two, is if it didn't work, the blame wasn't just on me. It was us collectively as a team, and so it was easier. It softened the blow of failure, okay? That is not a good way to be a leader, okay? Especially in a small business, because the fact is that the more decisive you are, and the more confidence you have, the more your team is willing to follow you no matter what the decision is, right? They're not going to pass the blame on to you, but when you decide that you're going to make all of the decisions as a team, guess what ends up happening? A lot of talking and a lot of inaction, right? So if we said, hey, we want to do this, let's just call it a 30-day challenge. But before we do, what does everybody think about that? Well, imagine if you're in the room with 7, 8 employees, they're all going to give you their opinion on it. And guess what? If you disagree with 2 or 3 of them and you agree with the other 2 or 3, you are now put in a position where you have to go against some of them, and that is weakening the bond that you have between yourself and those team members because you're choosing certain sides, probably the sides that most agree with your initial thought. So what would be more effective? Well, just take your initial thought, have confidence, go into that meeting and tell them your decision, right? You tell them your decision. Hey guys, we are going to be doing this 30-day challenge and it's going to be absolutely amazing. And here's why. And I'd like you guys to let me know your thoughts on what we're going to be doing, right? But you made the decision, you're doing it. The tonality and the narrative is much different. You're not asking them if you should, you're telling them as a confident leader, this is what we are going to be doing. And people love to follow, right? The majority of people, if you have 10 people in a room, 9 of them would be more comfortable following somebody than making all the decisions themselves. Now you, if you're watching this, are probably the one that is actually more comfortable leading. That's how I am. If I am in any kind of situation, I am just more comfortable leading that situation than I am following. I don't know why. When I have to follow what someone else is telling me, it bothers me, right? It makes me feel itchy. Like I'm not necessarily sure if that's a good thing or not, but it's just how I feel. Like I feel like I would be more comfortable being in charge of it. And that's how the majority of people feel. So first of all, when you're asking them to make a decision, they might already feel uncomfortable because they don't want to mess up either. Well, guess what? It's not their business. You make the decision, you deliver it with confidence, and you deliver it with decisiveness. This is what we're doing, and this is why. What do you guys think? Now, here's where I need your help, right? So you're the ops manager. I need you to help promote this. You're going to run it on Facebook. You're going to do this, send emails to everybody. You coaches, I need you to announce this before and after every single workout, so people are super excited and they sign up for their 30-day challenge. I, as the owner, I'm going to, or don't even call yourself, say I'm in charge of lead generation. I'm going to make sure that anybody that is in our local community sees this amazing challenge and wants to take part of it. And you see what I mean? So now you're assigning these things, but together, collectively as a team, you are responsible for the success or failure of it, but you didn't put that on them. You exhibit the ownership, you made the decision. And so you guys can celebrate your win as a team because each person plays a role in it. You're not doing everything yourself. That's part of why we built the team, right? But you are delivering the message, the game plan, the vision, all of that with confidence and decisiveness. You're not asking them what you should do as a company, okay? I fell into that trap. Don't do that, right? Make your decision. Tell them how they can help you execute that mission, but then move forward from there. Okay, so confidence and decisiveness. The next thing, transparency. Okay, this is one of the things I messed up the most. When I first opened my business, 2012, my gym, for the first, let's say, 4 years, especially with that team that I was not happy with, they were not bad people, but I felt like I could not share any of the profit and loss or anything like that with them because they would want a piece of it, right? If you have a team that would feel that way, that's a red flag right off the bat, right? Because they should understand that as their leader, as the owner of the business, how much you've invested, not only financially, but sweat equity. They should know that you put all this work into building the business. They should know that you spent all of your free time while they were at home or going out to the club or whatever they were doing, right? You weren't doing that. You were digging deep. You were investing in yourself. You were investing in your business. You were making it better. You had long nights and early mornings and all of this stuff. They would feel absolutely ridiculous saying, hey, we did great this month. Why don't you give me 20% of that because I'm, 1/5 of the team? If your team thinks that way, you have the wrong people on it, okay? And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but that is the truth. So I had the wrong team that would have thought that. So I was not transparent with the financials of the business. And I know what a lot of you guys are saying, I'm not going to sell, I'm not going to share my profit and loss with anybody. Let me tell you something. The transparency that you present to your team, it allows them to give more. When people feel like they're part of a movement, right, they will try harder to have it be a success. Okay, so if you have a goal, let's say your business has a goal of making $5,000 of profit every month, I can say with almost certainty that if your team is in on that goal and they know where you stand, it will be much easier for you to accomplish that $5,000 a month of profit versus you being the only person that sees how close you are to that goal. I can almost say with certainty that's the case. So when I got my new team, one of the first things I did was peel back the layers, and I created a way for my team to see the actual profit and loss of my business, the transparency behind it. I made a completely different video on that specific thing. So if you're interested in doing that yourself, just search in this group, profit and loss or something like that. And you'll find it, but it's basically showing them like, guys, this is the goal. And when we reach this goal, we're going to do this thing, okay? And so it would get them very excited about that thing. And maybe some months they could even pick what that thing is. Do you want a new piece of equipment? Do you guys want to go on vacation? Whatever it may be. But together, we are going to do it. Now, these are all our bills, dudes. Like, they're not going anywhere, right? And this is the money that we have scheduled to come in. So how do we bridge the gap? right? And I got them to rally behind it. And people got creative and they said, I think I can get John to renew his contract, or I could do this or that. None of that could happen if they just said, or you just said to them, hey, we need to make a lot of money this month, but you didn't give any reason why. There was no transparency behind it, right? They just think that you're constantly money hungry and pushing it, right? But they won't think you're money hungry when they see everything, right? Because people aren't stupid, right? So if they see it and they say, wow, this gym has $40,000 worth of expenses this month, but we only have $30,000 of recurring revenue scheduled to come in, Joey's going to take a $10,000 loss unless we sell some new members, right? They're not going to think that you're money hungry when you're pushing them to make sales. They're going to immediately know, like, shit, we got to sell because otherwise the business is losing money. But you would set the goal at $20,000 of sales from them. So there's a $10,000 profit. And when they do hit that $10,000 profit, reward them, right? But you can't do any of that. You can't apply any of that system if you're not transparent. And more so than just the financial ramifications of being transparent, they will trust you more. They will trust you more if they understand what's going on behind the curtain. Not saying that they need to make any decisions. And I only do this with my key players, right? The entire staff doesn't know our profit and loss. And I'm not sure it would matter if they did. I just don't think they can contribute to it individually as much as we can by keeping it amongst the leaders. Okay. So transparency is huge. Let them know if there's any big decisions or any pivots you want to make, let them know. Again, don't ask them to make those pivots. That's your job. If you don't feel comfortable about a certain thing, ask your mentor. Don't ask your team. They don't know. They're not any more qualified to make a decision than you are. In fact, you are the most qualified person in the business to make that decision. And you are most likely, most probable to make the right decision, right? If you're still very uncomfortable or unsure of a decision to make, that's why you have a mentor. Don't ask your team, they're below you. They know less than you do about running the business and the state of the industry, right? Ask your mentor. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is setting expectations based on what you've done yourself. Okay. And this comes with essentially like never asking anybody to do something that you would be unwilling to do yourself. Right. So if you hire a new cleaner, I don't know, someone to clean your gym, right? You should have already done that job yourself. So when you give them the expectation of, I need this done in this amount of time, and in exchange, I will pay you this, you have realistic expectations, because the last thing you want to do as a leader is set somebody up for failure immediately. They'll never accomplish the goal and they'll always think that they let you down, right? So you have to know any role in your business, exactly what you are expecting of them by what you've done yourself first. So even if you do it one time, say you're like, you know what, I haven't cleaned this gym in 8 years and it's much different than it was when we first built it. Before you bring somebody on and tell them you need to get this job done in 2 hours, you better bet your ass that you have to try it first, right? And see if you can get it done in 2 hours, right? And if you can, then that's a realistic expectation, and you're going to get, you can show them like, look, I've done this myself. This is how you do it. And even more so, besides just holding them to strict standards, you can help them. If they can't get it done, it's taking them 3 hours, you can maybe shadow them or ask them what their process looks like and improve that process for them because you've done it yourself. You've done that role yourself. Same thing with coaching boot camp classes or training somebody one-on-one or helping people get results or anything like that. If you have done it yourself, then you have a great perspective on leading somebody else to do it. If you've never done it yourself, then how can you possibly expect somebody else to do it to a very high standard, right? It doesn't make sense. And so I would say that always set your expectations based on what you've done. Now, there could be some situations where it doesn't make sense for you to do it anymore. And I totally get that. But then spend time thinking about somebody new doing it and set the expectations realistically. The last thing you want to do is set somebody up for failure. You can always, as they get better and better, have that conversation where you're like, look, you've been doing this for 6 months now. You're doing a great job. I want to add this to your role. And so then you're not overwhelming them. But always make sure that you've done every role yourself at a small business. We're not big businesses. Guys, not all these rules apply to business in general. If you have 100 employees at your company, chances are you have not done every single thing yourself, but you are a micro gym owner. So it is your responsibility to have done everything at such a small business, okay? Next thing is self-development, okay? So this is a huge characteristic trait that I've learned a lot about as an entrepreneur over the past decade is the amount of time and energy you put on, you put into working on yourself. Okay, so let's say when I first opened the company, I spent very little time on myself. And honestly, it kind of rolled into the ego thing where I thought that I already knew everything. So it was just a matter of time and execution before I got to what I wanted. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, there is so much that I didn't know and so much self development that has helped me become the leader that I am today. Right. And a lot of that is identifying what you're really good at and what you're not good at and deciding what you want to work on. Okay, but they're making the investment in working on yourself has such a profound effect on everybody else around you that any good leader should be self-aware enough to know if there's certain things that they need to address and work on. And I'm not saying that you need to spend half of your day reading self-help books and meditating, but I am saying that if you have an issue that needs to be addressed, don't forget about yourself. Don't forget about it's not just always protecting everybody else around you, but don't forget about working on you. Okay. So whether that means keeping yourself in great shape, whether that means constantly learning, whether that means taking courses to fix a specific problem or seeing a professional in any certain area, whether it's speaking or whatever it may be, there's a lot of areas where you could work on yourself. And I would argue that the best leaders out there are continually doing something. The only time where you're never doing anything is if you think that your cup is already full and you have no more room to add anything to it. But that's not how people work, because as you add things, you lose other things, right? So I may not have certain skills that I had 15 years ago, but I have new skills, right? And so we're always acquiring more knowledge. We're always acquiring more skills, or at least you should be, to be an effective leader. Okay. So that will be something I'm going to transition directly into it, from self-development to team development. Okay. So when you acquire these new skills, you get this new knowledge, you're working on yourself. You need to pass that on to your team so you can develop them as leaders. As an example, let's say you read a book that was incredibly profound on the way that you look at things, and you have a way to translate it or articulate it to how it can impact your business, right? When you meet with your team, especially the leaders, you want to share that with them. Hey, would anybody be interested in reading this book? Or even more so, like, hey guys, we have a book that we read per month. This is the book that we're going to do this month, and then in 30 days we're going to talk about how this could impact. That's a little bit more forcing the development on them, but either approach is good. But you are taking things that you've worked on yourself, and if it had a profound effect, you are passing that gift on to other people, and you're developing them as leaders. You're developing them as people. If you invest your energy into your best assets, which are your people, it will have a massive effect, not just from how well your business performs, but as a person. Why wouldn't you want to do that as a person? If you can improve somebody else's quality of life with simply information that they don't have yet, that you can pass to them, why wouldn't you do that, right? And if that person happens to be somebody that's in your inner circle, that is in your organization, a great leader will always do that. And they'll do that without having to be told to do it, right? They'll do that because they want the best for their team. Okay. So that's the next thing, is always work on some form of developing your team. And whether that is taking them to do an experience that they've never done before, passing information onto them that they don't have, sharing or inviting them to an event, right? Let's say, or sending them to an event. Send your sales guy, if you can afford it, to go see Grant Cardone if he's in town, right? That's going to develop him. It's going to make him a better salesperson. Now, I can't tell you the exact return on it. Is he going to close 10% more sales, 3% more sales, 20% more sales? I don't know, but probably something, because it's going to inspire him the same way that you work on yourself and you go see Tony Robbins or whatever you do, right? You can do that for your staff. And the more that you do that without a scarcity mindset, like, oh, they're going to take this information and leave. No. And we'll talk about having an abundance mindset in a whole different video. But the more that you can do that, the better of a leader you are, because now you're developing leaders, right? You're developing leaders amongst your team. So that's the good character trait that I didn't always think. I always wanted to hoard the information to myself in fear that someone else would take the information that I have and then do their own thing with it, right? And that was a bad mindset, because it was not helping the people I cared the most about grow as an individual, right? And that's just not a good characteristic trait of a great leader. And when I go through all of these character traits, guys, your team, they see all of it. They see how you're acting. They see how you are doing things, and they judge they judge your character traits on their own scale. They see how much ownership you have over things, right? They see how your ego is. It's not just you doing this for yourself. It's how people perceive you, especially on your team, plays a huge role into how much they're going to actually follow you, right? So, which is the whole point of leadership, is to get people that follow you, not because they have to, but because they want to, right? You want to have your followers follow you. Well, they're looking at all these things. Your confidence and decisiveness, they're judging you on that. Your transparency, they're judging you on that. Your setting of expectations and how well you train them, they're judging you on that. Your ownership, your ego, your self-development, they can tell if you're changing, right? They can tell if you're becoming a better person, right? And all of these things lead up to them wanting to follow you more. And when you have a tribe and a team members of people that want to follow you because they believe in you, that what you can do as a team is incredibly powerful. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about, number 8, is targeted communication. Okay, and this is how you talk to and associate with your team. Okay, so starting back my 10 years ago, I would literally be 100% business with my team. I would never ask them about their personal lives. I didn't care. I would never associate with them outside of business. Nothing, none of that, right? And that was the extreme, right? And it made my team feel like they were just pawns in my game, right? And I didn't actually care about them as a person. And it was just that I didn't know that that was important to them, right? I thought, well, they don't care either. It's just work. But really, that's not the best way to lead a team. Now, you don't want to be on the other end of it too. You shouldn't be going out and partying and drinking with your team. You shouldn't be talking to them about every single little thing. You certainly should never be talking about other team members behind their back with certain team members, right? We're talking about targeted communication. You talk to them about anything that is specific to their role or your relationship with them, right? You're talking about things and ideas. We're not talking about other people here. And so you want to target that communication, right? Ask them about their family, ask them about their personal life, see if there's anything you can help with, talk to them about their job. All of this stuff should be really targeted. You want to hang out with them? Plan events for your team, right? Plan events for your team and your members. Plan company outings like Christmas and things like that. But don't hang out with your team just for the hell of it, because it sends the wrong message and it's not targeted, right? There's no purpose, there's no anything behind it, and that's going to negatively impact your team's performance when you muddy the waters between a team member that works for you and a friend that they hang out with, and all of a sudden when it comes time for them to have to make a decision, now they have more variables. Do they want to listen to their leader, or do they want to listen to their friend? Well, that should have never been introduced in the first place. Okay, so you should have plenty ability to get friends and things outside of your business. But I learned this the hard way, not for myself. I never became super friendly with it just isn't my style, but I've seen other gym owners go too far with it and they couldn't get it back. They could never get the respect back of those people. Those people could never see the owner as anything other than a buddy that they went out drinking with for months, and now he all of a sudden wants to be the boss, right? But then don't do what I did at first and was essentially had no empathy for my team because I just hired them to do a specific job. There's a happy medium, but keep it targeted, right? Use communication cycles. If you don't know what those are, we teach all about communication cycles in FitBiz, but it basically explains like when you should be communicating with people and what you should be communicating with them about, right? And if you can follow those guidelines, it's very targeted, it's very effective, right? But it doesn't make people feel like you don't care or you're their buddy, right? It's a perfect balance. So that's the last thing I would say is you guys are a team, right? And at the end of the day, your team is there to win the game. Okay, you're there to win the game, and you are their coach, right? And you have to act like their coach. You guys are not a family. Okay, your team, your business is not a family. Okay, don't stop saying that. If you're saying that, a family will forgive people unconditionally, right? Let's say your uncle is always messing up and goes to jail or whatever it may be. Well, guess what? When he comes back, everyone's still going to love him because it's family. And yeah, it sucks and he's underperforming and all this stuff, but he's not going anywhere, right? A team does not work like that. If you have a sales manager and let's say he's your running back, and no matter what, he cannot penetrate the line of scrimmage, right? And you've done all of these different plays, you've talked to your O-line, but he just can't break through. Well, guess what? You might have to put him on the bench, or worse, cut him for somebody else that you can add to your team that can penetrate the line of scrimmage, because as a leader, you owe that to the rest of the team to win the game, right? And you owe that. It's your responsibility to align your teammates with the best A players that you possibly can. What kind of message do you think it sends to your team if you do have an underperformer that is not following the same standards as everyone else and you don't do anything about it? Right? You clearly have a C player on your team full of a bunch of A players. And as the coach, you don't do anything about it. What kind of message do you think that sends? Well, first off, it tells the rest of your team, hey, Coach Joey is okay with us doing the bare minimum. He's okay with doing just enough to get by because look at John. He's doing just enough to get by and nothing's happening to them, right? So that immediately lowers the standards of the rest of the team. But secondly, A players do not like working with B or C players. I hate it, right? If I am fired up and I'm ready to do something and I want to get it done and I understand the mission, I'm going to get after it, you know? And the last thing I want to see when I'm out there coaching somebody and they just lost 10 pounds and all this stuff is somebody else that somewhat represents me walking in the door 10 minutes late. Like, what the hell, man? Like, honestly, I'm in the same team as this guy. He's coming at 10 minutes late. He ain't set his workout up on time. Like, it makes me feel like I need to get out of there and align myself with a team that actually is here to win the freaking game. You know what I mean? And they're not going to probably articulate that to you. They're going to be like, hey man, I'm out of here. Like, here's my 2-week notice. I'm going to go play with these other guys that actually give a shit, right? And so it's your job as the leader to constantly align and make sure that everybody on your team is A players, okay? And so that's the last thing. That's what I'll leave you with on leadership is if you can do those 8 character traits, if you can develop them and develop yourself into really following them or at least working on them. Like I said, I'm not the perfect leader. I try my best, but I don't do all of these things perfectly. And I'm sure that if you gave me another 10 years, my list might look a little bit different than this. And I might have learned some things over the past 10 years, but I'm just giving you what I know now, having done it for the past decade. And hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes, or if you're doing those mistakes, at least have confidence to know that there is a different way to do it. And you'll probably have a better outcome if you do that different way, because that's exactly what happened for me. And that's the point of this group. It's for me to share with you everything that I've learned, my mistakes and my successes, so you can fast track and save years. As always, guys, that is the what you should do and why you should do it for great leaderships. If you want to know the exact how to do it, that is what FitBiz University does. We go tactically into all of this stuff so you know exactly how to lead your team step by step and have that impact on your business immediately. If this benefited you, if you liked it, please drop a like, a heart, a share, tag somebody in this that you think could benefit from it. And I will come to you guys next week on Monday, 2 p.m. live in the Facebook group, and we will be talking about the next subject. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. Drop a live, please, if you watch this live, or if you replayed it, if you're watching it on replay, drop a replay so I know how many people are viewing it in different mediums, and if we want to change the time or whatever it may be. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for following us, and I'll see you guys soon.